questions from the floor?
My brain can cope with you.
Just one, what's happening with TTIP nowadays? Is it all dead and done, or?
Okay, next.
Anything else? Can I ask then, how do you think life is going to be in the future when we've got global politics changing so quickly, when we may have a new leader in America, we may have things that have changed in Downing Street? How is that going to affect what we currently do? Because everything seems to be changing all at one time.
Yeah.
Donald?
I mean, obviously a big issue for the country is the vote, the referendum in the European Union and leaving the European Union. Do you have any idea yet of what the government's strategy is going to be in relation to that? I mean, I do understand that the First Minister has spoken about trying to retain Scotland within the European Union. It seems a bit difficult if we're going to be part of the main part of the United Kingdom, but I just wondered if you've got any intelligence as to what's emerging as what is actually going to be Brexit and what it means.
Okay.
Will we go first?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of TTIP, still up there, the European Parliament have been sending some of that back to the Commission. I think my fear is, which probably ties into the EU referendum, is that the current government, in my view, would sign up to TTIP on stilts if they could get away with it. And I think part of the problem with the EU referendum, where I think there's now going to be some difficulties for the government, is that there was no actual concrete leave offer. There wasn't, an offer that said, here is our preferred solution to the problem. There was very different one. They didn't say it'd be a Norway solution or Canada solution or any of that, and I think that's going to be a difficulty, and that's why I understand some of the arguments of once that offer's completed, that probably should go back to the people. And I think there is an argument for that. So at the moment there is no suggestion from the government about what they would like. Certainly there were a lot of people out there, and I was very concerned. I was at polling station in Govan for 3 hours from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on the day of the EU referendum. I was concerned about people thought it was a referendum on immigration and thought that by voting to leave they could stop immigration coming out of the country. I mean, I don't agree with any of the rhetoric in terms of immigration, because I think that we do need a degree of immigration in the country, certainly with an ageing population in Scotland, and in fact Scotland's population has only risen in the last couple of years, reversing a 40-year trend on the basis of immigration. But there is no information coming out from the government about whether they're going to sign up to the EU single market, because if they are, then they'll have to apply it, and they'll have to adhere to all the EU rules and regulations that they were saying they opposed in the first place. So it makes no sense, and that's why linking it to TTIP, I think it's interesting, because there were some people who voted to leave because they were against TTIP. But the problem is that we're with a Tory government who've elected someone who presented herself as a moderate candidate, and compared to the other four, she is a moderate, but she's not a moderate in reality. She's a hardline conservative, and you just need to look at the makeup of the Tory cabinet to see that that's the case. In terms of future global politics, I think we're all saying prayers that Trump doesn't win. I think it's a very scary situation, and certainly his tone and rhetoric is something else. Did anybody see the Republican convention last week? They were all chanting "Build the Wall."
Yes,
it's not an episode of Game of Thrones, Why would they build a wall? I have to say, Obama's speech last night, if you've not seen it, was marvellous in terms of dealing with and pushing some of that rhetoric back. But I think there are various changes in global politics. The Turkey situation is frightening in terms of there was an attempted coup, but that's now been used by Erdogan as a reason to grab more power. And obviously that's a situation where the Kurdish people, for example, are now very scared of the power that he's grabbing for himself. So I think that we do need to look at that. But what I would say in response to that is, what we have to do as trade union activists and trade union members is to, firstly, make sure we're recruiting and retaining our membership at all times, and to point out the huge advantages of trade union membership. And that trade union workplace earns more. If you're in a trade union workplace, you earn more than in a non-trade unionised workplace. That's the fundamental key to this. You're less likely to be dismissed. You're less likely to, you'll have better rights in the workplace, maternity rights or paternity rights. So as a movement, we need to continue to outline the advantages of the trade union movement in the workplace, because these changes in global politics are all about deregulation and giving big business more rights to do what they like. And the best vehicle that can stop that is a trade union movement.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things there, because Chris has been quite comprehensive. I think it is really, really important that the NHS is not included in TTIP, and that we make sure we protect the NHS fundamentally. Interestingly, when I was over at the UN earlier this year, we were speaking about obviously the upcoming presidential elections, and my understanding from that is that both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have said that they do not want to progress with TTIP, and that's because they're looking more at American jobs for American workers. So I'm not really sure. I think that will impact, the US elections will definitely impact on the progress of TTIP. The EU referendum will as well. We don't, we're in unprecedented territory just now, so no one really has the clear strategy that's going to take everybody ahead. What we're doing is looking at a number of options and looking at protecting Scotland's interest first and foremost within those options, and looking at making sure that whatever proceeds with, that we are right at the core of these negotiations, that all of the potential options are examined. Another independence referendum is obviously one of those options, but it is only one of those options, and it is about making sure that the best deal possible for Scotland is taken forward and is realised, because Scotland and the Scottish people overwhelmingly in every single area voted to remain within the EU, and we can't just dismiss what Scotland wants. And unfortunately, having been at Westminster for a year, just dismissing what Scotland wants seems to be par for the course. So, we saw that in terms of how far we got with Smith negotiations, and we've agreed to those, but we see it as a first step in the path towards having more devolved powers. And we also see it in terms of Trident and in terms of the EU outcome. So what we need to do is, whatever we're doing in anything we do, particularly in our party, but in all parties, is represent Scotland first, and that we have to make sure that we do that, and that Scotland's views and needs are protected, that our jobs are protected and our economy is protected, because that's what we've been elected to do. So that's what I would do.
Thank you very much.
Elaine?
Gordon?
We currently have the First Minister fighting Scotland's case in relation to the result of the EU referendum, and she is asking that the negotiations should explore all the options for Scotland, given that we voted to remain. And our union's policy is to agree with that we should explore all the options. But in exploring them, it does raise a lot of questions in regard to things like the Schengen Agreement. Because if you end up with Scotland independent in Europe, which is a logical outcome of exploring the options, that those parts of the UK that voted to remain are allowed to remain, and those parts that voted to leave are allowed to leave, and they negotiate a package for leaving, then the rest of the UK is out of it, and Scotland is then independent in Europe. And we could end up with a referendum that's asking people to vote for the pound against the euro. Will we be forced to join the euro? These are the questions that have to be answered if exploring the options leads us to that conclusion. So we'd like to hear from the SNP what is their policy on that, the pound versus the euro, and if we are to join the EU, it looks like we'll have to sign up to the euro to get back in, or to get straight in, or to remain in, if that's your view. It looks like we'll have to sign up to Schengen, which would mean unlimited immigration into Scotland from the rest of Europe, and that might lead us to having to build our own wall between us and England, or maybe re-erect and put something on top of Hadrian's Wall because it's already there. So these are the kind of sort of national issues that people will ask in a referendum. You know, Schengen and the pound, what are the issues? But more locally for us as a union, a lot of the things we raise with the Scottish Government, they say we can't do them because of EU regulations. Things like banning blacklisting companies from getting public contracts, banning 0 hours contracts, maintaining a living wage. We're told that the EU regulations interfere in all these areas. So if we're going to be independent in Europe, what kind of stance are we going to take on these kind of issues? I don't mean to throw the whole political sort of agenda of the union at you, but I think the two big questions are, you know, will the Scottish Government have freedom to act in its own internal matters, and what will the attitude be in relation to the pound versus the euro? How will they square that circle? Because you know, unless we go back to, you know, the old Scottish bob, which would be our own currency, unless we have some form of Scottish currency, then you're going to look at the pound versus euro. And I get the feeling if people are asked to vote between the pound and the euro, the pound would probably win, and that could materially affect the whole, it could skew the whole argument of independence. It could take away any credibility for independence in Europe, simply because it would be based on a euro rather than the pound.
To join the ERM is completely voluntary, so it wouldn't be necessarily a choice between the euro and another currency. I would think that you would have to join the euro would be a separate question if it ever came to that. And saying that though, we're all guessing what's coming in 2 years. I mean, the pound took one hell of a hit after the EU referendum, and there may be stages in terms of the negotiations where, you know, it would take further hits. So in terms of currency, I know that's one of the issues that is being looked at. Would it be a Scottish pound? It would either have to be the British pound or some sort of Scottish currency to get into the EU, because that's EU rules. You have to have some sort of currency arrangement. So it's not automatic that you have to join the euro in the first place. Secondly, in terms of EU procurement, I actually think, Gordon, that was one of the issues that did make some of our friends and colleagues vote for leave, because EU procurement, I think, is a problem. And I think if there was genuine renegotiations that Cameron was involved in, that's the sort of things they should have been looking at, no other things. Firstly, in terms of the living wage, is the procurement rules are that you have to pay the national minimum wage, which is different from the living wage, and I'm not even going to, you know, what they call the living wage, I don't think we should allow them away with that. We'll keep calling it the national minimum wage. One of the ways of doing that is that perhaps the national minimum wage should be the living wage, and it should be the living wage right across the board, no matter what each year, which is another issue in terms of the minimum wage. It's a scandal that the Tories' living wage is paid to those who are 25 or over. So that's a gap for those who are under 25 getting into the market, you know, trying to, that's another issue. In terms of blacklisting, I think the Scottish Government's actually progressed a bit more in terms of the direction that you and I would be looking at in terms of how we can procure. There are all sorts of rules now about how they self-cleanse, and I think that's the sort of direction of travel we need to try and chip away at in terms of what does that actually mean in reality, because there is an issue there about these companies have not been done for blacklisting, because at the last minute in court they will issue their apology and then they'll make an offer, and that's part of the, you know, that's part of the issues as well. So I think that there is, and I've always thought there was issues for the EU procurement. Our MEPs have never supported some of this EU procurement regulation for the points that you're making, because local authorities, including where I used to work in Glasgow, were using the same arguments. Can't pay the living wage and put it in the contract because of EU procurement. We have to outsource this service because of EU procurement and all of that. TTIP would be worse, because you could have companies in saying, I want a share of it. And that's why we're opposed to that. So you're right in terms of if there is a choice to be made in 2 years' time, and we don't know, because at the moment all sorts of options are being looked at, as you said, in terms of reverse Greenland, which is Greenland being out of the EU and Denmark being in it, and that would be a reverse in this case. But you're right, there is people looking at the currency issue, but don't think it's automatic. You should have to join the euro. But what I think has been interesting, certainly in my experience, is I know there are people who were on the platform arguing for a no vote in the Scottish independence referendum who now changed their mind. And it's the EU and access to the EU and that solidarity argument, which was thrown against us in some cases the last time, is now being used as an argument for yes. And I think that's probably, for me, one of the most interesting dynamics.
I think that the only thing that I would sort of add to what you're saying, Chris, is that the hard borders issue that you've raised, I think that's already an issue now in terms of Ireland, and that's something that's going to have to be looked at and negotiated through. Certainly we wouldn't be wanting a hard border between Scotland and England, but I think it's something that obviously the UK now have to look at in negotiations with Ireland and with the EU in terms of how to sort that out, because what they don't want there either, I would assume, is a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. So that's an issue that I think is going to be really important, but I think it will be wider than the issue involving Scotland. I think it will be an Irish issue too, if that makes sense. So I mean, I think what we need to look at, as I say, I just come down to it again, and I don't have all of the answers, and I'm not privy to all of the, as you can imagine, the discussions and the expert advice that is being given, is to look at all of the options and to look at, you know, how do we protect Scottish businesses, how do we protect Scottish universities, the grants that come to Scottish universities, the science work that we're doing, you know, how do we protect the infrastructure grants that we have from the EU. All of this is going to have a massive impact in going forward. Only last week I was hearing that one of our local infrastructure projects and linked with a city deal is linked to EU funding, and I'm thinking, you know, fundamentally these are all of the issues that are going to impact our day-to-day lives. So we need to make sure that all of the options are examined, independence being a potential one of them, but that the best option going forward is the one that gives Scottish people the best way forward in terms of the lifestyle that they want, the beliefs in the way that we want our country to run, and also in terms of our economy. So as I say, I don't have the answers. I wish I had all of those answers, Gordon, but I'm being totally upfront with you. Those are all things that are going to have to be looked at very, very closely over a period of time, and I think, you know, Scottish Government are doing that, and the UK Government are having to look at those very same issues as well.
Sure, I didn't expect you to have the answers to these things. These are just issues that are going to arise if we get to another referendum, and they're going to have to be looked at very closely, because they will be decisive in what way people vote.
And I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Any more questions? Anything? Yes.
I read somewhere that in 2013 in Brussels, Nicola Sturgeon had said that she supported the transatlantic trade and welcomed the trade with America. Now, if TTIP does come in, are the Scottish Government going to seek exemption for the NHS?
Well, we've already said that we would seek exemption from the NHS, so yes, that's our policy. It's not policy in England, I must say, in Westminster, but it's policy in Scotland.
That's why I say the Scottish Government.
Well, it's also policy to extend that to other public services like Scottish Water, because that would be another one that would be under threat.
I know in France they've done it, but
yeah.
Sanders or whatever it is they're doing over there, so just to say that we would be seeking to protect the NHS from that.
Absolutely.
Fundamentally, I think, you know, from my background, that's one of the no-go areas for me. We have to protect the NHS.
Obviously, nursing was extremely disappointed to see the bursary bill go through and be passed. What do you think will be the position in Scotland? Because obviously we've got this year student nurses and others in health services will get their bursary. Do you see any U-turn in that?
I would very much hope not, really, to be honest. It's not our position to do that, and you know, we obviously want to have people that go into nursing and go into health from a wide variety of backgrounds, and quite frankly, making it a bursary rather than a grant is going to prohibit a lot of people who might want to study and become a nurse or a midwife, and you know, and we need people to be able to move into those professions from all backgrounds. So I think that we have to protect that.
I think as well, I think certainly in the evidence was there and how they ignored the evidence of the courses are so different with the clinical experience element, that these are students that do not have the capacity to have an outside job.
Yes, and I spoke in that debate actually, and the figures I looked at, it was suggesting that nurses would come out with at least £50,000 worth of debt.
Yes.
Which is unacceptable. You know, and actually what makes it even more unacceptable is that when nurses are training, they're providing a service for the majority of that. So what they're actually doing is doing it for free. They're paying for it themselves almost to provide that service to the NHS, which I think is totally immoral from the Westminster government to put them in that position. People know. And I spoke because the argument that was given at Westminster was that, but people still apply for the courses even although they're going to be bursary courses. But when I spoke to the universities about that, they had told me that when students are forced to choose their courses or decide to choose their courses, if you have to pay for your tuition and for, you know, and you don't have a grant basically, which I was lucky to have when I went to university. If there's costs involved, more people then flood into courses which offer professions. So to say, oh well, people will still apply is actually a false thing to say, because yes, people might still apply for nursing and they might still apply for midwifery and they might still apply for those, but then they're not going to be applying to the same extent for arts courses and the other courses, because people want to then apply for courses where they think they might at least be guaranteed a job to pay back the money.
And I think the evidence they didn't look at was the attrition rate of people who use it as an entry for a degree and have no intention to working in that profession, and that is a problem.
Yes. Yes. So, and I think when I'd also looked at the figures, it meant that women again and people from disadvantaged backgrounds and ethnic minorities were then going to be even more so put off coming into the profession.
Well, I'm just going to give you a personal view. My personal view is that I support unison policy, which is that there should be salaries for student nurses, and I think that the trade union movement should, in order to get this back the way, should continue to argue for salaries for student nurses. Because I think that this is a nonsense that the student nurses in there not getting paid. I think is absolutely ludicrous. I think there should be salaries for student nurses. That's just a personal view and something that I'll continue to argue within party policy, is to have salaries for student nurses.
Donald, a question?
Oh, it's actually just, it's not really a question, it's really to comment this in relation to the bursaries, to say that, well, first of all, personally, I don't believe in any tuition fees. I believe that the days when we used to get a grant and went to university and got a grant, there was nothing wrong with that system, so I fully support that. Yeah. However, the thing about because when Osborne took the bursary, he took that and gave that money to the health service, which meant there was not a ban at consequential, because if Scotland chooses to continue spending that money on bursaries, it can't then spend it whatever NHS in England spend it in the NHS. So actually, although money is not being spent in bursaries, that has actually went to the NHS for other spending. I'm not saying it's the right decision, or whether it shouldn't have actually increased the amount. But the consequence for Scotland is that there was not a ban of consequential, and therefore we did not, because ban of consequential for Scotland would be for Scottish Government to actually decide to take the same policy initiative as in England and actually use that money for something else in the NHS. And I'm not advocating that, but there is choices when you decide how to spend money.
Indeed there is, and then that's another one of the little tricks that they do down at Westminster as well. You can try to protect people, and it's the same with the bedroom tax as well, you know, but you have to try and then mitigate it yourself. So these are the choices that we have, but I mean, I think, you know, fundamentally we do have a commitment to nurses, and I know that the Scottish Government policy currently is that we will not go down that route, and I think it is worthwhile, because we do want to make sure that numbers of nurses increase. We want to make sure that you know, we're able to staff our hospitals, that people from diverse backgrounds are able to go into these careers and professions, because otherwise, you know, I think it's a sad state of affairs, and it's not the Scotland that we want to see develop.
Lorraine, more questions? Right, I think on behalf of the branch we would like to thank both Lisa and Chris for their eloquent conversations this afternoon. Thank you very much.